Kaboul, les attaques des Moudjahidines repris.
Har du nogensinde fortalt din livshistorie før?
So, yeah, Jonas, I wanted to start with a question you've probably answered many times over the last 2 years. Because actually, it's been 2 years now that your film premiered at Sundance.
Yeah.
As far as I can, yeah. And so I still think it's important for viewers, in France, to kind of have the answer to this to kind of start the conversation, which is, why did you choose animation as the medium to make this documentary, to tell this story?
It's really for different reasons. I think in the beginning, it was kind of random. I was invited for this workshop in Denmark called AniDocs, where they invite documentary filmmaker and animators to develop ideas for animated documentaries. So the film was an animated documentary from the very beginning, but I thought animation would be great for this film in particular because, most of the story takes place in the past. And when you do documentaries about, events in the past, you're always kind of struck with like, how do you make it feel alive again? How do you make it feel present? And I thought maybe animation would be a great tool to do that. But also in my conversations with him, who's a very dear friend of mine, I kind of understood his need of wanting to be anonymous, that he didn't want to be public about these things that he experienced, because what you see in the film, what you hear in the film is the very first time he starts to open up about his trauma. And he could do that to me, but he didn't want to be public about it. He didn't want to meet people in the street or at work or in the supermarket who all of a sudden knew about his innermost secrets and his traumas. So the fact that he could be anonymous behind the animation was really what enabled him to start opening up and sharing his story. And then lastly, it's really a story about memory and trauma. And the animation really enabled us to be a lot more kind of expressive in our style of telling these stories. When he started to talk about things that's really difficult for him to talk about, or things he has a hard time recalling, we could use the animation as a tool to really dive into this kind of more kind of emotional experience.
But animation, as I'm sure learn while making the film, it takes a lot of time to do. And so whereas documentaries, they can be filmed over a certain period, but then there's an editing process, they tend to be faster. How did that, process of doing animation, did it change the way the film would be shaped? Did it change your ideas about Amin and his story because of the time-consuming process of animating everything?
I think it changed the process in the sense that animation is really a different approach, because you kind of start the editing before you shoot, which sounds a little weird in when you do because normally when you do documentaries, you follow someone around and you shoot all your material, and then you kind of shape the story in the editing room. But here, because animation is so costly, you can't animate 80 hours of material. You need to know exactly what you want to animate. So you kind of start editing early on. And I had all these interviews. So we had the sound, and then we had these kind of rough sketches, these storyboards, so you had in the editing room. So we kind of shaped the story around this testimony that was given to me. And then we put all the images together, which was kind of amazing to experience, because, normally in documentary, when you go out and you shoot something, maybe, something is going on and you turn your camera in one direction and something happens over here. And then you don't get it, and that's just, of course, that's too bad, and you have to work around it. But with animation, you can really get the shots you need, so you can be very precise in your way of telling a story. Because normally if you didn't get the close-up shot in the exact moment, that's too bad. But here you could get that shot and make it happen. So it gave a lot of freedom in our way of telling the story, and we were able to be very precise in how we wanted it told, because we weren't kind of a slave to some footage that was shot. But of course, the process was long. It takes a long time. But you close the edit, you lock the edit before you start animating anything, and then from there, it's more kind of going into a hardcore production where it's more of an Excel spreadsheet where you need to animate this part and this part and this part, and it's not about the more storytelling creative anymore. That's been done already.
so the first part was filming the interviews with Amin. How did because he seems very reluctant at first to talk to you about his story. How did why do you think, or how did you get him to agree to do the documentary in the first place?
It was really him who also wanted to share his story. He felt this story that he had carried around for so long created this kind of disconnect in his life, and the fact that he didn't feel he could be honest to people. He kind of kept people at a certain distance all the time because he didn't feel like he could be honest. So to him, to be able to share his story and connect his past and present, and start being honest to the people he cared about, the people around him that he really cared about, was really important to him. But that being said, it was of course very difficult for him because he hadn't talked about these experiences for all these years. So it took a long time. We spent around 4 years doing these interviews, and I've done around 20 interviews with him. And in the beginning, it was really the broad strokes of the journey going from Afghanistan to Denmark. And then from there, it's really about going deeper and deeper into these experiences. Also because in the beginning, he didn't recall everything, things he had kind of suppressed and forgotten. But then slowly, when he started to address it, things would come up, and slowly he would be able to share more and more.